Hi, I am Mike Zyda, and today's talk is entitled Japan 1985 through 1997. It's more of a story of my life than anything. So I'm going to put this on play, and there we go. So I'm Mike Zyda, and I'm in my basement in my home in Carmel by the sea, and it is the 3rd of October, 2024. And this is going to be a rambling talk. I had a lot of consulting in Japan from 1985 through 1997. Some of that consulting went all the way out to the year 2000, to about 15 years, and it was really fun. I enjoyed Japan a whole lot. I miss it. Tokyo Tower. All right, how I got to Japan. I was a professor at the Naval Postgraduate School in 1985, 84, and I went to my dean and I said, I can't afford to live in Carmel or Monterey anywhere because it's too expensive for the money I am making here. All I can do is rent. And my dean mentioned to me, he goes, well, professors at the Naval Postgraduate School are allowed to consult. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, we have a signed memorandum to that effect signed by the Secretary of Navy. And I said, which Secretary of Navy? And he said, John Forrestal, which is a long time ago. I said, okay, let's go. And I asked him if there were any limitations, and he said, well, you can't consult for someone from whom the US government might buy something. So in my mind, I'm going, oh my God, that means I have to do something outside of the United States, and I have no idea how to get there. So anyway, this is kind of how I started in Japan. It starts kind of from that first meeting with my dean at the Navy School at that time. And in October 1984, I met with Marvin Kadich. And Marvin Kadich at that time was the salesman for Silicon Graphics for Monterey and for the Navy School. And he and I had lunch on the Fisherman's Wharf in Monterey. And he says, I told him about, I was having a hard time living and I needed some consulting. He goes, well, I just sold 3 Silicon Graphics machines to a company, Quadrix Corporation in Campbell, California, and they resold them to a company in Tokyo named Japan Tech Services, and they resold them to Hitachi Kojo, Hitachi Works in Hitachi-shi, and they don't know how to turn them on. Would you be willing to go over there and teach them how to program those machines? I said, well, sure. And he goes, how much would you charge? And I said, well, $1,500 a day for every day I'm there, including travel days, and 25,000 yen a day in expenses, plus hotels just covered directly without me having to pay. And he says, well, let me go talk and see what's up. And, you end up talking to a lot of people in your office, and, they ask you something exciting like that. And then they don't come back ever. But anyway, let's move on. This is Marvin. Marvin was one of my absolute wonderful friends at Silicon Graphics, and he was a great joy to know. And he was super supportive of whatever I did. And by the way, I went out onto the internet, and he passed just about October, I think, 2023, just as I got back home to Carmel. And he was like the first person I was going to look up and say, hey, let's have lunch. He's gone. I went to look for a picture, and there was one very low resolution picture of him. And I put it through Topaz Photo AI, and this is what I have, which is like the only picture I have of him. If you have a picture of him, please send it my way. He was great fun. So he's the reason I got to Japan. And Marvin, all of a sudden, yeah, I should leave this on here. Marvin all of a sudden sent me a note saying in January, saying people in Hitachi want to know how fast you can get there. I said, well, I don't have a visa. And so we arranged for me to get a work visa for Japan. I think it was a 5-year work visa. And I had to give my passport to someone who took it to the Japanese embassy in San Francisco and brought it back to me in Carmel. And next thing I know, February 1985, I was on my way to Japan. But before I went, Marvin suggested I talk to Gene Eswine, who was at Quadrix Corporation at that time, and he's a senior engineer, project engineer at General Electric, and worked at Hitachi Nuclear. And he had just come home from 3 years in Hitachi at working for Hitachi Kojo. And I had a great, hour-long. I drove up to San Jose at his office. We talked about Japan, and he gave me the skinny on, what goes on there. And he says, I remember one funny thing though. He said, there are no signs there for you to figure out how to get around. And I'm like, really, no signs? I think it was in the end he couldn't read kanji. So there are signs. You just have to read Japanese. It's all right. So Gene Eswine sent me to Japan Tech Services, which is in Shiba Daimon in Japan. I got on the airplane. I took Japan Airlines in February '85. I think because someone else bought the ticket directly, probably Kazi. And I asked for a no smoking seat. And this is very funny because there's no smoking on planes now, but no, I was in business class. I also asked for business class round trip tickets. So I get in the plane, and I think the first 7 rows in front of me are business class smoking, and I'm in the one sole non-smoking row right behind 7 rows of smokers. So non-smoking row back then didn't really mean damn thing. This is me. I'm 30 years old in this picture in 1985. I will turn 31 in September of that year. This is Kazi on the right side of the picture, and one of the Hitachi plant construction engineers on the back, and we'll talk about that group later. Anyway, it turns out this is the only picture I have of Kazi. I thought I had other pictures lying around. I've gone through all of the boxes in my house looking for pictures, and this is the only one I found. All right. Japan Tech, this is the company, and they represented, initially, they were the first importer of silicon graphics machines into Japan. They also were the first importer of cyberware and Syra LiDAR cameras and a number of other pieces of CAD software. And you can see my name here in Kana. It says Michael Zyda. It says California, Monterey, Kyoto. He lists me as a professor, as a executive consultant for Japan Tech Services. And I was that from 1985 all the way through the year 2000. And this is just a Google map piece of where Japan Tech Services is located. So if I start you from the right, you'll see a red circle there, and on that red circle is kind of where Japan Tech Services office was. If you see the next red circle to the left, it says Family Mart in the middle. That's the Shiba Daimon crossing, all right? And that's, so technically we're in Shiba Daimon. Probably on the far right, it says Hamamatsucho, which is where the JR station is for getting off. And up at the middle, about the middle, a little bit up, is Shiba Park Hotel, which is a 3-star hotel. I mean, if you rolled out of bed really quickly, your knees would turn the television on. And the location is really cool because we are next to Zojoji, which is a Buddhist temple complex dating to 1622. And it's Shiba Koen, which is Shiba Park. And behind that is Tokyo Tower, which is like the symbol of modern Japan from a long time ago now. This is Shiba Daimon crossing. It's very cool. And JTS is in the Shiba Daimon area. In fact, it's part of the address. Again, I left a couple of pictures in here. Here's Shiba Daimon. I think this Buddha-like statue is in Zojoji in Shiba Koen. And you'll see me reading the Monterey Herald kind of in this crazy fashion. And the only reason for that, by the way, was the Monterey Herald at that time if you would send a picture in of you traveling somewhere interesting, they would reprint your picture in the Herald. And I sent this one in, and of course they didn't print it. This is one of my former students from the Naval Postgraduate School, John Roseley, who ended up in Japan at the same time. And he and I got together at some big shopping hall here, Tokyo Tower. I went to the top of it. It's a very big, great view of just about everything. All right. This is Joji Jinja, which is the shrine. And I ended up being in Tokyo, I think just 3 days. I stayed at the Ginza Daiichi Hotel, which was kind of nice to be in Ginza. It's kind of a dive hotel at the time. Probably still is a dive hotel. Just that kind of place. When I got to Hitachi-shi, I ended up in this hotel. At that time, it was called the Hotel Park, which is run by a Korean family in Japan. And now it's called the Hotel Hitachi Hills. And right on the first floor to the right, it was a pachinko parlor. So I ended up getting rooms above the pachinko parlor. And if you've ever been to above a very noisy pachinko parlor at night, it's pretty crazy times. The front desk in 1985 looked exactly like it does now. And I took these pictures off of Google Street View. That front desk, cashier slot there, if you wanted to make an international call in 1985, you have to come down to the front desk and say, hey, I'm in room 302. I need to make a call to this number. And they would go, well, it'll take us 15 to 20 minutes to be able to get an international line to America so you can call your family back home. And it also was very expensive. I think it was $4 or $5 a minute. So it was like, didn't do it too often. So I think I disappeared for the first trip, which is 3 weeks long. Anyway, for some reason, I still have the matchbooks from Hotel Park sitting in my drawer here, and I scan them. It also has a restaurant, which is the left-hand side, and where you can go. And they had two different kinds of breakfast. One was Japanese breakfast, and the other is, of course, American breakfast. And they're different places. You couldn't sit together. It's interesting. All right. One of the things my business agent, Kazi Yokota, did is he took me over to this establishment here, which at the time was called Kotsuzumi. And you can see I saved the matchbook for Kotsuzumi. Kotsuzumi is that little drum on the left. It's a famous Japanese drum. It's the name of the bar. It's actually a eight-stool sunaku, which is a little snack shop. Will serve you some Japanese food while you sit in a bar stool and drink. And so it's named after this drum. And there's me. I'm now you have to imagine I got to Japan in 1985. I had never ever eaten with chopsticks before, and I had in fact never eaten any Japanese food. And here I am learning to use chopsticks for the first time, which is hilarious. And you can see when you are 30 years old, you have hair, and it's not gray, it's reddish. Here I am trying to eat noodles with chopsticks, which still to this date is complicated and difficult, but I do it no matter what. Here I am. This is the owner of that place, Kotsuzumi. Her name is Hirayama Misako, and she would teach me how to eat Japanese food. My business agent left me at this sunaku and said, come here every night for dinner. They will make you a different dinner every night. They will teach you how to eat it. They will teach you how to drink sake. They'll teach you how to speak Japanese and, learn to sing Japanese songs in karaoke, which is pretty crazy. All right. So I was in Hitachi-shi, to be a consultant in the end for Hitachi Works, Hitachi Kojo. Hitachi Kojo means factory, so they call it Works. You can see in the middle of this is a big green patch, like a garden, and you can see there's like a little parking lot or something on the left, kind of on the left-hand side of that. These are two bomb craters left over from World War II, I was told when I was there. And I don't remember which of these buildings I worked in. All I remember is I think it was on where it says Saiwacho. It's on that side of the buildings, and when I'd leave at the end of the day, I'd come out on that National Route 245. All right. So I consulted for Hitachi Kojo from 1985 through 1997, and my trips were pretty much the same. I would get there. I would get, I would go to Japan for 3 weeks and then come back. And most of it, I was, in Tokyo for like 2 days and come up on the Monday of the first week. And then I would work 7 days a week until I left on the last day. And this set of pictures, these Polaroids, were taken on February 28th, 1985, which is the Friday of the last day I was at Hitachi Kojo. And this was a commemorative picture. The day before, the 27th, this entire group, plus the head of the Hitachi Kojo and the second in command, the third in command, we all went out to dinner, and we got done with dinner early at 9 o'clock, and then we went out drinking till 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to be back at 8:30 in the morning to get the company pictures taken, which are these pictures. So I got home. I kind of got to sleep by like 4 a.m. and I had to get up about 8 a.m. to go into the company. So you kind of look at the top left. I'm kind of leaning back there. I'm in front of a silicon graphics machine, which has the Hitachi logo on it. And what I did with this group is I taught them how to program Iris GL on the SGI machines. I think they had the Iris 1400s and 2400s at that time, which had about 2 MB of memory and had, I don't know, a very slow processor. I mean, it's probably 1 MIPS processor at this point in time, if I recall correctly. So I'm there. I don't remember many of the names anymore. I just remember they were wonderful people and I had a great time. The only one I remember is Nakamura-san, who's the guy wearing the gray coat in the upper right-hand side and the left in the first two pictures in the top. And he was kind of the head of this group of people that we work with. And I went there to teach them how to use Iris GL. And because this group at Hitachi Kojo, they design nuclear power plants and they made plastic models, full quarter scale plastic models of the power plants. I think it was quarter scale. And whenever they changed a power line or a pipe inside of the real plant, they had to, the Japanese regulatory agency required that they put that plastic pipe and plastic wire into the plastic model. And so this is 1985, and these guys were thinking, well, we really should build a CAD system so we can design our nuclear power plants with that CAD system. And so my work with this group over 3 years was to help them build a 300-person software development team to go and build a CAD system that Hitachi could use to design nuclear power plants. Okay, these are just blown up versions of those pictures. And you can see me. It's funny because back then I wore a tie all the time. Probably none of you have ever seen me wear a tie, except for maybe once or twice in years and years. So this group is fun. I do remember a story they told me, which I thought was great. Is I think in the first Sunday, so this group, I asked them, they said we're going to work on Sundays. I said, really? I said, did you ever get a day off? And they go, we get one Sunday a month off at this time. And one of the things that I learned is you can't leave work until the big boss has gone home. And the person who tells you that you can go home is the second in command. So the big boss was a guy named Yoshinaga-san, and a very imperial guy, very friendly guy too. Underneath him was Okoshi-san, who was a very tense guy, and under him, I think, was Kawahata-san, and he was the third in line. And his English was really good, and they're planning on paying his way to go to Stanford to get more education, if I recall correctly. And so this was a fun and interesting group to work with. Again, this is me. You can look at the back of my head and there's hair. Look at that. Pretty funny. Anyway, all right, let's move on. So in 1987, I met with another group of engineers who were at Hitachi Plant Construction and Engineering, and they said, we're going to invite you next year. And so they put me in their budget to work for them from 1988 through 1996. After 3 years at Hitachi Kojo, I mean, the first year I taught them Iris GL. The second year they asked me if I could teach them lighting and shading in computer graphics with Iris GL. And the third year they asked me, could I teach them how to do networking, because they wanted to take 16 silicon graphics machines and stacked the monitors in a 4 by 4 array, and they wanted them all to be linked up so that they could have a high resolution walkthrough of the power plant on this big multi workstation screen. I wrote the software for that. And that was in 1987, and that was how I got into networking virtual environments. All right. Okay, Otsuka. Otsuka is part of Tokyo. So what I would do is I'd start my day at uh, Hamamatsucho on the JR line, and I would take the JR line until I got to Otsuka, and I'd get off at Otsuka. And when I got off at Otsuka, I would go to this building, which is the Imai Mitsubishi building, and that is where Hitachi Plant Construction Engineering was at the time. And usually, when I would be there would be February, and getting onto the JR line, there was no air conditioning, and you would be squeezed in with people totally, and I would be a sweat ball by the time I got to work at that day. So this is Kazuo Kota and me. I cut out the piece before, and this is the Hitachi Plant Construction and Engineering team. And I do not remember what year this picture was. This picture is, I think, 1988, but it could be 1988 or any year between 88 through 96. This group brought me in to Japan just a huge number of times. In fact, over my career going to Japan, I was in Japan 21 times from 1985 through 1997. That's a lot. I had to get a new passport just because I ran out of pages. All right. In the upper left-hand corner of this picture is a young guy named Umehara. Sometimes they called him Umebara or Umechan, and he was the head of the engineering group that I work with. His two upper-level bosses are the two middle older gentlemen standing up, and I'm trying to think. I think their third in command is the guy in the far right, and then the engineers that I actually work with are Umehara, the other guy with the other gentleman sitting right underneath him, and so it was kind of fun. This group was great because they wanted me to teach them how to use the silicon graphics machines, teach them Iris GL, teach them networking, all of the things I'd done for Hitachi Koto. And then some of these trips where they'd say, "Can you come here for 3 weeks?" I said, "What are we going to do? This is just coming these days. We'll figure out what you're going to do when you get here. We've got an office for you, so bring your own work, and you can just kind of hang out in an office. We're planning on having a meeting with you, but we don't know what day it's going to be. Just be here for 3 weeks so that we can figure out what day." And it would be like, I'd ask every day, "Is it today?" And they go, "No, it's not today." And they would take me out to lunch. And this is how I learned to eat so fast, is their lunches. All of these guys are smokers. And what they wanted to do was be in the restaurant at 12 noon and finish eating at 12:05. So we'd go and get like a eel with the sauce on top and put on top of rice. And we would learn how to eat that in 5 minutes because they wanted 55 minutes to smoke. In fact, by the way, when I first got to Japan in 1985, they had a big sign on the wall at Hitachi Kojo, and it said, "Every other hour you can't smoke, but other hours you could smoke," because it was killing the hard drives of their workstations. Which is pretty funny to think. Probably none of you who are watching this has been in a company that had active cigarette smokers. And in fact, Hitachi Plant Construction Engineering, when I got there, uh, they were times had changed in Japan. You had to go home at 6 p.m. At 5 p.m., you started taking all the trash that was near your desk and bagging it up so it could be picked up by the cleaning crew. And you had to sit there till 6. And at 6, they would play some bells and you all left at the same time, which was just totally amazing. When I was at Hitachi Kojo, we were there till 9, 10, 11. And what I learned is when they were there to 11, they still had to take me out to dinner for an hour and a half. And the trains all stopped running at midnight, so they would take some capsule hotel space and show up the next day in the same clothes. It was kind of, so that's why I learned Japanese, by the way, was so I could take care of myself. They could go home at the end of the workday. I could go out and eat dinner by myself. And that's what happened. Sumihara, he's great fun. He's got a super great sense of humor and can do humor in English, which is great. Um, gentleman on the left with a mustache and glasses. This is Mohammed Osman, who is from Syria, and he is an HVAC engineer. So this part of Hitachi Plant Construction Engineering, they designed substations for power plants, not that work with the nuclear power plants. And so I think Mohammed Osman is connected to me on LinkedIn, and he's in Dubai now, and he's like the president of Hitachi Plant Construction uh, for Middle East, for MENA. This is me again. There I am, looking very young and thin, size 42 jacket. In those days, I'm now size 48 jacket for having worked at Gold's Gym as trying to compete as a bodybuilder for like 9 years. Anyway, this is Umihara. He's fun. This is kind of what the lab work looks like at HPCE. And you could see all these engineers sitting in front of silicon graphics machines at this time. They bought 300 machines. So this is a pretty great group here in terms of that. Oh, when I would go to work, this is what the JR line would look like. It would just be totally, totally packed. It would turn into a sweat ball. All right. So those are the things I would do in Japan. In the end, I consulted for 21 different companies in Japan. I did Hitachi Plant Construction Engineering, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Ishikawa Harima Industries. I helped found Nihon Silicon Graphics Kabushiki Kaisha, and they did that in coordination with Japan Tech Services. So it was great. I went to a lot of places in Japan by myself, pretty much. I believe this is Asakusa Kannon Temple, and it's just all this really cool stuff. And what you learn is this is in Tokyo. Everything in Tokyo was burned to the ground during World War II. So this is all rebuilt after the war. These pictures are kind of in random order. This is the Wako building, which is a store. It is in the Ginza. It's very, very 1930s look. This is again, just to show you what does Tokyo look like. There's when people are crossing the street, this is what it looks like. You can't drive through it. You just have a huge bunch of people to go through. I'm in Tokyo Tower taking this picture, I believe, of this is a cemetery, and people are buried standing up there, and they have little statues and sticks that go into the grave. Geronimo Shot Bar. I just thought that was a cool picture. I think it was out of business when I took this picture. This is in Otsuka. One day they said, "Oh, you're interested in games. Let's go out and play games." So we went out and played these Capcom games uh, over in an arcade that was near their offices, and this is great fun. So, and I'm in Tokyo, and one day I saw this woman playing this drum, this guy playing. I think it is that. I think it's not a sax. It's a flute or some sort. And there's this woman with this umbrella, and it was a very Japanesey picture. And they're all in front of a pachinko parlor, which is, of course. So in fact, this woman saw me taking this picture. She changed her position for me to get a better picture. I took this guy because he's one of these monks who stands there hoping that you will put some coins into his pocket. By the way, in 1985, I think, if I recall correctly, it was 265 yen to the dollar when I arrived. And when I stopped coming to Japan in 1997, it was 87 yen to the dollar. So it went from being everything was really cheap for me in Japan to everything was really expensive for me. Oh, I went to Kamakura. This is Daibutsu, the big Buddha. You can actually go inside this guy. And um, this is a picture. I went there by myself. I figured out how to use the trains, which is good. And these other two guys I don't know, but they were on the train with me. We got off together. And these young women who are down below, they all met us there. And they said they were English students of, I think, a Japanese college or high school. I don't even remember what it was. And they had to help Americans or people who spoke English go visit Daibutsu in the park around there. And they took us to lunch too. That was part of their schooling. So here we are. In fact, that's why I have pictures of myself, is because normally, unless I'm when I'm traveling alone, I don't have any way to take pictures. And look at me. I've got my leather bag, my LL Bean leather bag down there. I'm wearing the coolest sunglasses, and I am thin. This is a really good picture. And this is one of the temples that's part of that Daibutsu complex. This is actually in Shiba Daimon. I came home one night in Shiba Daimon, and they were carrying um, a local god on on the wooden sticks. I don't know what they call that, the transport or something. And it was just, we never see this kind of stuff in America. I think another day I was walking through a temple somewhere, and they were taking wedding pictures of this woman and her husband to be. And I just thought it looked very cool. And I thought, these look really cool. It's like I wanted to get the suit of armor on the left, but I don't think it would fit in my suitcase, or my wife probably would think that's not what you need. Okay, here I am. I'm in Ginza. I do not know who took this picture. It was probably my translator took this picture, because often when I was in Tokyo a lot, they would often give me a translator who would take me, make sure I got fed and all that kind of stuff. It's another picture of Tokyo Tower. I mean, you can't get enough of this. And I think this is really funny because if you look at um, the Eiffel Tower has nothing underneath it, and this is a building that's built underneath it. So they built the Eiffel Tower, the Tokyo Tower, over a building, or that building got built after Tokyo Tower. I don't know what the history is. I will look it up and figure it out. Okay. I believe this is the insides of the Jinja at Shiba Koen. This is um, these are this is like a cemetery, and people in the cemetery put these little idols out, and they put little hats on them and dress them up and put plastic flowers out there in little cups. I don't really know the history of it, but I just thought it was very cool. Now these are all old pictures, prints that I had lying around in a box since 1985 through 97. And I scanned them and I ran them through Topaz Photo AI to make them look better. And they look not too bad. But okay, if you want to say where do the cool people go in Japan, at the time I was there, it was Harajuku. And so in Harajuku, what you'd see is these bands playing rockabilly and dressing up in punk fashion, which is kind of funny, actually. And so the day I went there, it was very cool. And, this guy's scary pancake makeup on the side. And, I just took random pictures. Also, you would see they'd be playing rockabilly music, and you'd see these guys who were dancing in rockabilly style in the streets with like really, teased up hair. I mean, this is kind of like, whoa, what is this? It's kind of fun. Harajuku is also where you could go get the cool clothes that didn't look normal. In fact, when you were on the I'm trying to think, must have been the Yamanote line to get there. You would get on, and I'm 5'10". I could look above most people's heads at that time, and they all had dark hair, of course. And then as you got closer and closer to Harajuku, the pink hair and the blonde hairs would start coming in. It's kind of cute. It's something to remember. Still Harajuku. And here I am. You'll notice I'm wearing Birkenstock sandals. And what I realized is that practically every place I went to work or eat um, required that I take my shoes off when I get there. And so I said, well, I should just wear sandals. So this is in the summer, and I forget what summer this was. I remember it was just miserably hot and humid, and I dressed appropriately. This is again the Wako building on Ginza. Um, I think this is the Bunraku Puppet Theater, if I recall correctly. I just took a picture, thought it was really cool. And this is the Tokyo Ginza Sanai building. It's this round building, all glass up to the top. And this is a big crossing in Ginza. So if you're in Ginza, you should be at this corner at some point in time. And I think the Bunraku Theater is right there as well. I think this is one of the this is again a cemetery. And I just thought this picture of this Buddha-like character in the cemetery with the sticks of all the dead was Very, very cool. All right, now this is kind of crazy. I don't remember all the dates of my trips to Japan. I think I have the old passports and I could probably find them, but it's probably not super important. And one day, this is funny. This is December 7th, 1991. I woke up and turned the television on, and they were playing an advertisement that night they were going to play the full 3 hour long Tora 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 on television for the first time in Japan. And I said, "Oh my goodness, this is the movie about the attack on Pearl Harbor." And so I said, "Well, I had just been reading the Japan Times about some politician had just gone to Yasukuni Jinja, and Yasukuni Jinja is a shrine to the war dead. And even the war criminals are buried there, and it was some huge scandal for him to go there. So I decided to go there. Um, Yasukuni Jinja means basically peaceful country shrine. It's a Shinto shrine located in Chiyoda-ku in Tokyo. And it was founded by Emperor Meiji in June 1869 and commemorates those who died in service of Japan from the Boshin War of 1868 to 1869 to the two Sino-Japanese Wars, 1894 to 1895 and 1937 to 1945, respectively, and the First Indochina War of 1946 to 54, including war criminals. And the train's purpose has been expanded over the years to include those who died in the wars involving Japan, spanning from the entire Meiji and Taisho periods in the earlier part of the Showa period. And the shrine lists the names, origins, birth dates, and place of death of 2,466,532 men, which is a lot. This is the Haiden, which is the main hall of Yasukuni Jinja. And what you can see is this is a ship that was sunk during the war. And what you can see is the names of the men who are on the ship all put out. They have a Japanese zero there. It's number 13. I guess he didn't get shot down. He's in a museum. Again, here's the Haiden. I took all these pictures inside of Yasukuni Jinja. There's a war museum there, and this is one of their tanks. This is a propeller that got shot of a plane, and one of the things that you learn is the Japanese basically called World War II something like the Pan-Pacific Co-Prosperity Sphere. And if you are in Yasukuni Jinja, you can in that war museum, what you'll see is they'll tell you in the story that the reason they started the war was that America cut off the oil importation to Japan, and Japan needed to take over countries that had oil, and that is what you'll learn. It's a different view of what Americans think probably of World War II. All right. Um, went a lot of places in Japan. It was fun. I had a great time. But I had a web page for many years called Japan Tips, and so I upgraded it a little bit and I tacked it on the back of this just in case you're thinking of going to Japan. And I'm primarily thinking of people who are going to go to Japan for a long time. So I would go for 3 weeks at a time, which practically I had to live there. I had to take care of myself. I had to learn how to speak with people. And my first trip to Japan, I had like 4 weeks notice that I was going. And I was assured that learning Japanese was not necessary as everyone spoke English, which is true of the engineers I worked with. But this turned out not to be true for anybody who's in the service business. Like when you're checking into a hotel, there's a line of 100 people, and those are the English only speakers, and they're speaking to the one person in the hotel who speaks English. And then there would be a line for Japanese speakers that had nobody in it. And so I looked at that and said, it's worth my time to learn how to speak Japanese quickly. So that's how I got there. And what I had on my first trip was a stack of 3x5 cards that told service people things like, take me to the main gate of Hitachi Works. It would read something like, Hitachi Kojo onegaishimasu. And take me to Hotel Park. I'd say, Hotel Park onegaishimasu. And then, where's the bathroom? Tore o doko deshouka? And other such important places. And I think one of my last trips in Hitachi, there was this cold breeze blowing in from Siberia, and I lost this set of cards. This is probably in 1985. And I spent 3 weeks in Hitachi, where the people I worked with spoke again, and not the people who were trying to feed me. So I returned home from my first trip, determined to learn Japanese. And, just like you, I'm pretty overcommitted at times. A year passes, and I knew again about 4 weeks out that I was heading to Japan. Exactly. It was exactly the same week, shifted by a day in February 1986. And I wanted to be able to speak at least for simple questions. And most importantly, I wanted to make up my own sentences. So somehow I found this book, Japanese in 10 Minutes a Day, which is distributed by Cliff Notes. That makes sense, doesn't it? And the book teaches you how to construct sentences, and it's basically a Roman character treatment of the Japanese language. And some people think it is wrong to learn Japanese this way. I do not, because I spent an hour on each of the first 20 lessons. There's 24 lessons in the book, and I had the whole first 20 memorized and was capable of doing them. And when I got to Japan, I was able to tell people what I wanted. I could tell taxi drivers where I wanted to go. I could check into hotels. I could buy food. I could buy train tickets. And most of this was one-way communication. I simply told people what I wanted in simple sentences, and I got most of the time what I needed. So this book, there's a modern version of this. Mine had a slightly different cover, but this is pretty much the same book. And once you've done Japanese in 10 minutes a day, I then jumped into some other books. One was a Japanese kana workbook, because if you're going to learn to speak in Japanese, you really need to know how to read and write the kana, which are you can learn kana, then you can actually speak phonetically kana, and everyone will understand you. And then I came back, and in Monterey, there is this thing called the Japanese American Citizens League. It's on Adams Street. And I went over there and used this book, Japanese for Today, which is grammar and kanji, and had a set of tapes that went with it. And I listened to the tapes almost 2 years every day while I rode my bike to work. And this drove the dialogues in my brain. But I also would attend Saturday classes. I'm trying to think. I think they went from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on Saturdays for the children of Japanese whose children did not learn Japanese growing up. They were hoping they would learn Japanese, and what I learned is, after a semester of that, was that they didn't really want to learn. Their parents sent them there. They didn't want to be there. I used the class basically as a timing and a syllabus that could help me self-guide to learning to speak Japanese, because I was going to Japan and I had to speak Japanese. All right. So the workbook I had is a different one than this. Learning Japanese workbook. This is the one you should probably get today. It's on Amazon. And then kanji. You should get these in paper form, because you need to learn how to write these uh, in handwriting. And what you learn is the characters have to be written in a particular way for people to understand them. If you write them in the wrong order, and you can see that in the right hand cover, it has a 1, a 2, and a 3. That's the order you draw those lines. And if you draw them in a different order, people won't be able to read your character, which is really weird. All right. And by the way, in 1985 through 1987, there really wasn't uh, much in the way of computer support that I could use to do Japanese language. I had to do everything right by hand. So some tips for today, of course, Google Translate. You can see the screenshot I took of Google Translate. If I say, "Watashi wa kyouju da," that means I am a professor. And if you have Google Translate, you can actually practice with it and learn the pronunciation. Also, the Google Home device is really good. You can say Google Japanese translator, and it will come up with a fantastic translator. I also recommend Pimsleur language app. You can select what language you want. Of course, Japanese is one of the choices. And if you I used Pimsleur to learn Mandarin. So I did the first 20 Pimsleur lessons in Mandarin so I could learn to speak Mandarin. I could say things like, all right? And it's like a subscription, but you can use it for many languages. Have those on your phone. It's not a big deal. This is how to get from Narita to downtown Tokyo, because at the time, international flights didn't go to Haneda, but people go International flights now go to Haneda. If you can get to Haneda, you are in downtown Tokyo. If you fly into Narita, you are 2 hours away from your hotel, and that is a pain in the butt. I mean, if you do go to Narita, it is cheaper. You can take the Narita Express train. There's the instructions how to do this. I'll leave these up long enough that you should just save the screen and get a Narita Express ticket, and away you go. Oh, this is how you buy a ticket. And it was only about 5,000 yen back then. Important functional places. What do I mean by that? If you're going to spend multiple weeks in Japan and you're an American or you're not Japanese, um, a supermarket, National Azabu Supermarket, has American groceries. Okay, it's fantastic. It's off of the Hibiya line at Hiro Station. You kind of have to wander around and wind your way from the Hiro main cross streets down the street and to the left. And it's where you can go and get boxes of cereal, American boxes of cereal, fruit, things that you might want to eat for breakfast instead of a Japanese traditional breakfast. Although I think today I would probably do um, traditional Japanese breakfast. I'd be cool with that. Hotel breakfasts are about 2,000 yen at that time, and that's about $20. So I was trying to save a little bit of money towards the end when the yen was 87 to the dollar. Bookstore Kinokuniya Books is off the Yamanote train at Shinjuku Station. So if you're in Japan and you want a paper book to read, you can go here. Although, nowadays, just if you travel with an iPad, just download it onto Kindle or something. Away you go. One other bookstore that used to exist in Ginza was called Jaina, and it was fantastic because I ended up, when I stayed in Ginza, it was like really fun to go there. All right, Akihabara. Everyone wants to go to Akihabara. It's kind of a interesting place. It's like where you could go see all the new electronics and video games and massive consumer electronics. And it's just completely gaudy. It's awesome to go there. So if you're a consumer electronics addict or looking for electronic parts, I think one time I found a cell phone radio that you could get, which was listen to all of the local cell phone calls being made from wherever you were. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's probably you can't bring it into the US though. Um, there was a Ginzu knife guy who would shred electrical cord with that knife out in front of, I think, one of the stores. And if your hotel is stuffy, just hop over to Akihabara and get yourself a fan. All right. Since most of Japan is modern, I know my wife would always say, bring some traditional handcrafts home. Thank goodness I found in Tokyo this thing called Japan Traditional Craft Center, where you could get off at Gainmai subway station from the Ginza line and walk past the post office to the Plaza 246 building. I've given you a link there. At this time when I went there, it was in the second floor. It may be different now, I think. But you could go get handmade paper, lacquerware, dishes, all kinds of, teapots and all kinds of things that are great to bring home to your family and friends from Japan. I swim every day, and I was there in one summer, and I discovered this pool. I had to take the JR line to the JR line that does the cross through the middle of Tokyo, and it's called the Chuo JR line, and it cuts through the middle of the Yamanote Circle, and it's Tokyo Gymnasium, and you can bring your own suit, but you have to you can purchase goggles there if you don't have goggles, and you have to wear a swim hat. So, by the way, every time I travel in Asia, Korea, China, Japan, you've got to wear a swim hat for some reason, and so you got to have that, and you also need to bring a towel because they don't have towels, which is funny. All right, it's a beautiful space. Beautiful space. One thing, you get dressed in the locker room, and then you walk through a hallway of knee-deep, highly chlorinated water with a shower of water, chlorinated water pouring on you before you can get into the pool. They make sure you take a chlorinated shower before you get in. Things to read in Japan. Probably you read these all on the internet now. Tokyo Journal. This is the magazine to read to find out what is happening in the Big Mikan. For some reason, that was the English acronym, people would call Tokyo. And it was a great resource to find out where are the hot places to eat and drink and go to. I think one time I read that they had a tattoo museum, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm gonna go find it." I never could find it. Anyway, the Japan Times, if you understand the long-term politics of Japan, and then you should read this every day. I think even after I stopped being in, I read this every day. I had a subscription for years until probably the year 2000. I probably had that subscription from 1985 to 2000. It's super helpful for me to understand a whole lot more about Japan than just a traditional tourist. Anyway, acknowledgments. I have lots of great friends in Japan. When in the years I was there, since many of them are heavy smokers, many of them have passed, which is very sad. I haven't been in Japan except for 8 hours in a long time. I went to Beijing to be the keynote speaker at the Beijing International Film Festival, and they flew me into Haneda Airport. I had to leave immigration and go stay in a hotel that was in the airport overnight and then come back for in 8 hours to be on an airplane. So I didn't really get to see anything. This is my email. This is my website. If you are on WeChat, that's what the QR code is for. Anyway, let's skip ahead and I will stop sharing this. I encourage you to go to Japan. It's great fun. Also, China is great fun. I probably should do a trip about China. I mean, a video about China. I had a wonderful time. I made a ton of money over there. And Japan's economy kind of crashed and burned, I think, in 1989 and never, they didn't, I think in 1985, if you read the Japan Times, you would read articles that said if we take out uh, equity loans in all the buildings in downtown Tokyo, then we can buy all the stocks in the New York Stock Exchange and all of the property in North America. And the Japanese took out equity loans on their buildings and they put it into their own stock market and drove the Nikkei up, I think, to 44,000 yen. And I think in 1989, it crashed to 13,000 yen. And they had no equity trust corporation like America had when it had its similar problem. And Japan is just starting to creep out. And so it's funny. I basically learned a language that I needed from 1985 through 1997, maybe 2000. And nowadays, with the translators on your phone, like Google Translate, you have a camera, you take a picture of a sign, now you know what the sign says. Um, it may not get a lot of people inspired to learn a language, but things are different now. Anyway, that's all I have to say. You have a great day, and this has been my column, and we'll talk to you on our next column. Have a great day. I'm Mike Zyda. Have a good day. Bye bye.